In 1965, as the civil rights struggle escalated, Black Americans were in the streets fighting for justice and equality. They were being attacked and killed. But a different kind of violence was taking thousands of Black lives every year. Segregated medical care was a brutal reality for Black Americans.
Negroes had one ward. If you were dying from cancer, if you were there to have a baby or whatever, you're on the same ward.
Everything was segregated. Not just the hospitals, but physicians' practices. I was the only Black pediatrician in the entire state.
People were dying as a result of that segregated system.
The 1964 Civil Rights Act tied federal funds to desegregation. Now Medicare, with its promise of federal funds, created an opportunity to end the shocking inequalities in medical care. This is the remarkable story of how civil rights activists and the federal government, working together, desegregated thousands of hospitals practically overnight, bringing life-saving care to millions of Americans. This little-known story reveals the role of countless people who never took center stage, but whose shoulders we stand on. For most of America's history, a system of racial segregation dictated every aspect of life. In no area was this more true than in healthcare.
You think about the civil rights movement, you think about housing, public accommodation, education. But I think the story hasn't been told often about what happened in terms of the institutions of medicine. So that's an unrevealed part of the history.
When I was 2 years old, I almost died of whooping cough. Being admitted to the hospital was not even an issue. Hospitals were segregated, as were most hospitals in the South.
I couldn't lift my head, and I couldn't sit up. My uncle came and picked me up. He took me to the hospital, and the hospital said, "We don't know what this is, but we're not going to take a Black child that we don't know what it is."
Living was separate and unequal. So that made some individuals and communities sicker than others in the first place. But then once you got sicker, then access to the healthcare system was also unequal.
Black activist doctors such as Dorothy Farabee created health outreach programs that served thousands of Black Americans in the South before World War II. Shut out of white hospitals, Black doctors founded their own hospitals. But limited resources and a hostile government crippled their efforts. Lacking access to mainstream medicine, people in rural communities resorted to home remedies passed down through the African American community for generations.
Only access to health care had been what your parents or grandparents or other people on the plantation knew about things that grew and that they had access to.
In the mid-1960s, while poor people of all races had little access to medical care, segregation made access even worse for people of color.
They didn't have to go to Africa or Latin America or Southeast Asia. We had a third world, including a third world for healthcare in Mississippi. People who lacked food and clothing and shelter, no protected water supplies, having to haul clean water from 5 or 10 miles away, disease, malnutrition, suffering, and their combinations were rampant.
This was a population that had no medical care practically, and many who had never seen a physician before in their life. Women who had 8 children but had never seen a physician.
The system was a feudal system. You would get permission from the person that owned the plantation, and they would give you a note that you could go to the doctor.
A lot of hypertension, and people assumed it was a birthright. My mama had it, so they just sort of waited for it to attack and waited to have the strokes and everything.
These were reasons that life expectancy was so short for Blacks in Mississippi, that infant mortality was so high.
In both the North and South, Black babies died at twice the rate of white babies.
30 to 40% of live births was at home, sometimes not only at homes, but in the cotton field.
We didn't have a nursery. And we just took drawers out of cabinets and put babies in them, you know, and we could put those right by the mother's bed so that we didn't lose any babies or anything.
There was just a little broom closet where they would stick a bassinet and you had to go and check on your own baby.
They would tell fathers of newborns that they couldn't have their wife and baby back until they paid a certain amount of money.
It was a $125 bill. And I said, I don't have $125. And the lady said, well, we'll just have to keep the baby. And I thought, that's excellent. I'll come and visit him every day. He's going to get fed and taken care of.